Well, greetings. I'd like to welcome you to this class on what I think is a very crucial topic that is often overlooked in much of our educational process, and that is dealing with the dynamics of the small church. One of the questions that we have to wrestle with in our ministry, and one of the questions that is being dealt with in much of our approach to the church today is, can the small church survive in a large church market? Some would say no to that question. Others would say perhaps if there's a number of significant changes. But still we wrestle with that question of how can the small church be dynamic, be effective, and be vital as a contributor to the evangelical church and still remain small. As we approach this course, one of the things that I want us to do is to wrestle with those questions. That as we examine this course and the material, that we will gain a perspective of the small church and an understanding of the distinctives of the small church and how we can effectively lead the small church so that it is effective, it is vital, and it is a major contributor to the advancement of the kingdom of God. In order to do that, the first thing we need to do is understand the nature of the small church. Oftentimes, when people approach their perspective of the small church, it's based upon an approach that is not involved in terms of the dynamics of the church. They have viewed the small church from afar. They have not been involved in detail into the small church. And yet they formulate ideas and perceptions about it. And so part of what we want to do is to develop a better understanding of how the small church operates. Because if we're to be effective as leaders, we need to go into the small church understanding both its strengths and its weaknesses, so in the process we can lead the church to spiritual growth and effective ministry. Oftentimes, in our age of largeness, when large seems to be the model of success, and growth seems to be the measure of effectiveness, the small church is oftentimes looked down and devalued because it lacks the visibility and the size and the strength of the larger church. However, to recognize the value of the small church, we need to understand that there is a vital connection in the small church. That it has a vitality to it, a strength to it, that is oftentimes even stronger than in some areas than the large church.